It was a cold day in Antarctica, the kind where the wind howled like an angry beast and every breath felt like swallowing ice. The team of scientists had been drilling deep into the frozen wasteland for weeks, searching for anything that could explain strange energy readings detected by satellites. What they found wasn't just something. It was beyond anything anyone could have imagined. Buried under layers of ancient ice lay a metallic object, smooth and shimmering as if it didn't belong to this world. And it didn't. The artifact looked almost alive, pulsating faintly with a bluish glow. When the scientists brought it back to their research station, they realized it wasn't just a piece of alien tech, it was a message. After hours of tinkering, one of them managed to activate it. A hologram flickered to life, showing tall, slender beings with elongated heads and glowing eyes. Their voices echoed through the room, calm but urgent. They called themselves the Verithi. "Listen carefully," the leader said, his tone serious. "Do not attack Earth. Do not underestimate humans." The room fell silent. The scientists exchanged glances, unsure whether to laugh or panic. But then came the story, a warning wrapped in history. Centuries ago, the Verithi had thought humanity was nothing more than primitive creatures crawling on a rock. They decided to invade, thinking it would be an easy victory. Boy, were they wrong. Humanity, despite being vastly outmatched in technology, fought back with everything they had. Spears became missiles, fire turned into plasma, and sheer determination transformed into strategies that baffled even the most advanced minds. The Verithi underestimated human creativity, adaptability, and above all, their will to survive. By the time the dust settled, the invaders were defeated, their empire shattered. The survivors fled, leaving behind this artifact as a cautionary tale for any other species foolish enough to try the same mistake. As news of the discovery spread, governments around the globe scrambled to figure out what to do next. Should they tell the public? Would people panic? Or should they keep it secret, preparing quietly while hoping no one noticed? Debates raged behind closed doors, but one thing was certain: humanity needed to prepare. If the Verithi's warning was true, Earth might not be alone in the universe, and not everyone out there wished them well. Then came the confirmation no one wanted to hear. Astronomers monitoring space spotted something unusual near Jupiter. At first, it looked like random debris floating in orbit. But as telescopes zoomed in, the truth became clear. It was a fleet. Hundreds of ships, massive and menacing, heading straight for Earth. Panic rippled through command centers worldwide. Was this another invasion? Had the Verithi's warning come too late? For now, Earth waited, holding its breath. No one knew who these newcomers were or what they wanted. All they knew was that humanity stood at a crossroads. This was no longer science fiction. This was real. And whatever happened next would change everything for better or worse. The fleet approaching Earth was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Massive ships, each one bigger than a city, moved with an eerie grace through the void of space. Their surfaces shimmered with strange patterns that seemed to shift and change as if alive. These weren't just machines. They were works of art designed for war. The beings aboard these ships called themselves the Krylos, a militaristic empire that spanned multiple star systems. To them, Earth was nothing more than a speck on their galactic map, a resource-rich planet ripe for conquest. When the Krylos finally entered Earth's orbit, they wasted no time. A transmission crackled across every screen, radio, and communication device on the planet. The face of their leader filled the screens, a towering figure with sharp features and glowing red eyes. His voice boomed, deep and commanding. "Attention, humans. You are now under the control of the Krylos Empire. Surrender your world or face annihilation." For a moment there was silence. People around the globe stared at their TVs, phones, and computers, trying to process what they were seeing. Was this real? Was it some kind of elaborate hoax? But deep down, everyone knew. This wasn't fiction anymore. Humanity was staring into the face of an alien invasion. Instead of cowering in fear, something remarkable happened. Leaders from nearly every nation came together in an emergency summit. For once, old rivalries and political squabbles took a back seat to survival. They agreed. Surrender wasn't an option. Earth would fight back, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. If they gave up now, everything humanity had built over thousands of years would be erased. So, plans were made, strategies drawn, and defenses fortified. What the Krylos didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Ever since the discovery of the Verethi artifact, governments had secretly pooled resources to develop advanced technology. Some of it came from studying crashed UFOs found in remote parts of the world. Other breakthroughs were born out of sheer human ingenuity. By the time the Krylos arrived, Earth had weapons and tools that even the invaders might not expect. The first wave of attacks began without warning. Dozens of Krylos fighters descended from the motherships, firing energy beams that tore through the atmosphere. Cities shook as explosions lit up the sky. It was chaos, but not defeat. Hidden beneath mountains and buried underground were Earth's secret weapon systems. Energy shields sprang to life, protecting key locations from destruction. Plasma cannons mounted on satellites fired back, taking out several enemy ships before they could regroup. But the real game-changer was the pilots. Men and women who had trained tirelessly for years flew sleek, futuristic jets equipped with eye assistance. These machines didn't just follow orders. They anticipated movements, calculated risks, and adapted mid-flight. Against such unpredictable tactics, the Krylos struggled. Their ships were powerful, yes, but also bulky and slow compared to Earth's nimble fighters. One by one, their vessels exploded in bursts of light, sending shockwaves through their ranks. Back on the ground, civilians watched the battle unfold live on news channels. Social media buzzed with updates, videos, and messages of hope. People gathered in streets and squares, cheering whenever an alien ship went down. There was fear, of course, but there was also pride. Humanity had always risen to challenges, no matter how impossible they seemed. This was no different. The Krylos, however, weren't used to losing. Their leader, furious at the unexpected resistance, ordered reinforcements. More ships poured into Earth's orbit, determined to crush the defenders once and for all. But even as the fighting intensified, humanity held its ground. Every loss was met with determination. Every setback answered with innovation. One particularly daring maneuver turned the tide temporarily. A squadron of Earth's best pilots lured a group of Krylos bombers into a trap. Using decoy signals, they tricked the aliens into chasing them into a narrow canyon. Once inside, hidden missile launchers opened fire, destroying the entire squadron. Cheers erupted in command centers worldwide when the footage came through. It was proof that humanity wasn't just surviving, it was winning battles. Still, the cost was high. Cities lay in ruins, millions were displaced, and countless lives had been lost. Yet, amid the devastation, stories of heroism emerged. Ordinary people stepped up in extraordinary ways. Farmers turned their fields into makeshift landing zones for damaged aircraft. Engineers worked around the clock to repair equipment. Teachers comforted frightened children while organizing supply drives. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. It was fighting for each other. As the days dragged on, the Krylos grew desperate. They launched another assault, this time targeting civilian areas. Hospitals, schools, and neighborhoods became battlegrounds. The cruelty of these attacks only strengthened humanity's resolve. Volunteers joined militias, learning to operate weapons within hours. Families huddled together in bunkers, sharing food and stories to keep spirits alive. Even in the darkest moments, humanity refused to break dot by the end of the first week. Both sides were battered, but unwilling to give up. The Krylos still outnumbered Earth's forces, but their confidence was shaken. They had expected an easy victory, a quick subjugation of a primitive species. Instead, they faced a relentless enemy capable of thinking outside the box. Humans didn't play by the rules, at least, not the rules the Krylos understood. Meanwhile, Earth scientists worked feverishly to unlock more secrets from the Verithi artifact. Buried within its data were hints of a powerful weapon, a device capable of turning the tide decisively. Building it would require time, resources, and sacrifice. But if successful, it could end the war in one fell swoop. As the smoke cleared from yet another skirmish, commanders gathered to discuss their next move. Morale was low but not broken. Soldiers shared quiet moments with their comrades, finding solace in laughter and camaraderie. Civilians looked to the skies, praying for dawn to come. No one knew what the future held, but one thing was certain: humanity wouldn't go down without a fight. And so, the stage was set for the next chapter in this cosmic struggle. The Krylos had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price. But the war was far from over. Both sides knew that the coming days would decide the fate of billions. Humanity stood united, ready to prove that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire strong enough to burn through the darkness. The war had reached a breaking point. The Krylos were relentless, throwing wave after wave of attacks at Earth's defenses. Their ships filled the skies like storm clouds, blotting out the sun in some places. Cities burned, oceans churned with debris from destroyed vessels, and the air was thick with smoke and ash. Humanity was holding on, but barely. Every victory came at a cost, and the weight of those losses was beginning to show dot in the middle of this chaos. Scientists working on the Verithi artifact made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden within the alien data was a blueprint for something called the Sunfire Cannon. It wasn't just another weapon, it was a game-changer. Powered by energy harnessed directly from the sun, the cannon could fire concentrated beams, capable of vaporizing entire fleets in seconds. If humanity could build it, they might finally have a chance to end the war. But there was a catch. Constructing the Sunfire Cannon required resources scattered across the globe, rare metals, advanced components, and massive amounts of manpower. And time was running out. The Krylos weren't slowing down. If anything, their attacks were growing more brutal. They targeted power grids, communication networks, and supply lines, trying to cripple Earth's ability to fight back. Building the cannon would mean diverting resources away from immediate defense efforts. It was a risky gamble, but one that had to be taken. Work began almost immediately. Engineers, technicians, and laborers poured into hastily constructed facilities near the equator, where the sun's energy could be captured most efficiently. Giant solar arrays stretched across deserts, collecting sunlight and feeding it into massive reactors. Factories worked around the clock, melting down metal and assembling parts with precision. Volunteers from all walks of life joined the effort: farmers, teachers, artists, anyone who could lend a hand. Humanity wasn't just building a weapon. It was building hope. While the construction crews raced against time, pilots and soldiers continued to hold the line. Fighter jets screamed through the skies, dodging enemy fire and launching counterattacks. Ground troops fortified cities, using whatever materials they could find to create barriers and traps. Civilians did their part too, turning basements into shelters and rooftops into lookout posts. Everyone had a role to play, no matter how small. Together, they formed a patchwork army united by a single purpose: survival. But the Krylos weren't about to let humanity catch its breath. As the days passed, their tactics shifted. Instead of brute force, they started targeting morale. Massive holographic projections appeared in the sky, showing images designed to terrify. Scenes of destruction played on loop, burning cities, fleeing crowds, desperate cries for help. Voice recordings echoed through the airwaves, repeating messages meant to break spirits. "You cannot win," the voice said over and over again. "Resistance is futile." At first, the psychological warfare worked. People stared at the projections, frozen in fear. Some even considered surrender, believing the Krylos were invincible. But humanity has always been resilient. Leaders rallied their people, reminding them of what they were fighting for, not just survival, but freedom. Stories of courage spread like wildfire. A young boy who helped carry supplies to the front lines. An elderly woman who organized food drives for displaced families. A group of teenagers who used drones to scout enemy positions. These acts of bravery inspired others to keep going, even when the odds felt impossible. As work on the Sunfire cannon neared completion, tensions ran high. Spies reported that the Krylos had discovered the project and were planning a major assault to destroy it before it could be activated. Commanders scrambled to reinforce the site, setting up anti-aircraft guns, missile launchers, and ground troops in a desperate attempt to protect it. Everyone knew that failure here would mean the end. Finally, after weeks of non-stop effort, the cannon was ready. Standing tall against the horizon, it looked like something out of a dream or a nightmare. Its core glowed with an otherworldly light, pulsing with raw energy drawn from the sun itself. When the switch was flipped, the machine hummed to life, vibrating with power. For the first time in months, there was a glimmer of optimism. Maybe, just maybe, humanity had a chance. The activation of the Sunfire cannon marked a turning point in the war. During its first test, the beam sliced through a cluster of Krylos ships, reducing them to nothing more than drifting particles. Cheers erupted from command centers and bunkers alike. The weapon worked, but it came at a price. Drawing so much energy from the sun caused temporary instability, triggering blackouts and climate disruptions across the planet. Crops failed, temperatures fluctuated wildly, and storms raged without warning. People began to question whether the cure was worse than the disease. Public opinion started to shift. Protesters took to the streets, demanding answers. Was winning the war worth sacrificing the planet's stability? Could humanity rebuild if it survived? Debates raged in government halls and living rooms alike. Some argued that the cannon should be dismantled, while others insisted it was the only way to ensure victory. In the midst of this turmoil, cryptologists working on the Verithi artifact uncovered another clue, a reference to something called the Singularity Core. According to the records, the Singularity Core was a device capable of amplifying existing technology to unimaginable levels. Paired with the Sunfire cannon, it could theoretically wipe out the entire Krylos fleet in one decisive strike. But building it wouldn't be easy. The blueprints were incomplete, and the materials required were rare. Worse still, the instructions hinted at risks that bordered on catastrophic. Activating the core might create a black hole, swallowing both friend and foe alike. Despite the dangers, the decision was made to move forward. Humanity had come too far to turn back now. Teams of scientists and engineers pored over the data, piecing together what they could. Factories ramped up production, mining operations dug deeper, and volunteers risked their lives to gather the necessary components. Time was slipping away, but determination refused to falter. Amid the frenzy, ordinary people found ways to contribute. Artists painted murals depicting the struggle, inspiring unity and resilience. Musicians composed songs that became anthems of hope. Writers documented the war, ensuring future generations would remember the sacrifices made. Even children pitched in, organizing fundraisers and writing letters to soldiers on the front lines. Humanity wasn't just surviving. It was thriving under pressure, finding strength in the face of despair. As the final pieces of the Singularity Core came together, the Krylos launched their biggest attack yet. Hundreds of ships descended upon Earth, determined to crush the resistance once and for all. Pilots fought valiantly, buying precious minutes for the engineers below. Soldiers held the line, refusing to retreat despite overwhelming odds. Civilians prayed, watched, and waited, clinging to the belief that humanity's ingenuity would see them through. Finally, the Singularity Core was complete. It sat atop the Sunfire cannon, a small but powerful device glowing with an eerie light. Technicians double-checked every connection, triple-checked every calculation. There was no room for error. One mistake could doom the entire planet. When the order came to activate the system, everyone held their breath. The fate of humanity rested on what happened next. Would the Singularity Core amplify the cannon's power as promised? Or would it tear apart reality itself? No one knew for sure. All they could do was trust in the brilliance of human innovation and hope that it would be enough. The completion of the Singularity Core brought a mix of relief and unease. Humanity had poured its heart, soul, and every last resource into building this device, a final gamble to turn the tide of the war. But as the engineers finished assembling it, doubts began creeping in. Could something so powerful really work without tearing apart the fabric of reality? What if activating the core caused more harm than good? These questions lingered in everyone's minds, but there was no turning back now. The Krylos fleet loomed larger than ever, their attacks growing bolder by the hour. Earth had one shot left, and failure wasn't an option. As news of the Singularity Core spread, cracks started forming within humanity itself. Not everyone agreed on how to proceed. Some nations argued that using such a dangerous weapon could destroy the planet along with the invaders. Others insisted it was the only way to ensure survival. Debates turned heated, with leaders shouting over each other in emergency meetings. Trust, which had been fragile from the start, began to crumble under the weight of fear and uncertainty. Then came the betrayal. A whistleblower revealed that certain countries had secretly negotiated with the Krylos behind closed doors, hoping to save themselves or at least secure better terms for surrender. They shared critical information about Earth's defenses, including details about the Sunfire cannon and the Singularity Core. The revelation sent shockwaves through the global alliance. How could anyone side with the enemy after everything humanity had endured? Outrage swept across the world. Citizens took to the streets, demanding accountability. Protesters held signs reading, "No surrender" and "Unity or extinction." Social media exploded with messages of defiance. People refused to let betrayal weaken them. Instead, they rallied harder, vowing to stand together against both the Krylos and those who sought to undermine the fight. In response to the crisis, a new coalition emerged, the Global Defense Alliance, GDA. Led by a group of scientists, military strategists, and ordinary citizens, the GDA aimed to unite humanity under a single banner. Their message was clear. Earth would not bow to invaders, nor would it be torn apart by internal divisions. Every nation, every community, and every individual had a role to play in defending the planet. One of the GDA's first actions was to tighten security around the Sunfire cannon and the Singularity Core, with the Krylos aware of their existence. Protecting these assets became the top priority. Troops fortified the area, setting up layers of defenses, anti-aircraft guns, missile launchers, and even traps designed to confuse enemy forces. Civilians volunteered to help, digging trenches, transporting supplies, and keeping watch for incoming threats. Everyone understood what was at stake. If the Krylos reached the cannon before it could be activated, all hope would be lost. Meanwhile, the Krylos launched a fresh wave of psychological warfare. They broadcast messages directly into people's homes, using hacked satellites and radio frequencies. The voice of their leader boomed through speakers, cold and calculating. "Your resistance is futile," he said. "Even your greatest weapon will fail. Surrender now, and we may spare some of you." Images of destroyed cities and fleeing refugees accompanied the broadcasts, meant to crush morale. But humanity didn't break. Instead, the opposite happened. People grew angrier, more determined. Families gathered in living rooms, listening to the broadcast with clenched fists. Communities organized rallies, lighting candles and singing songs of defiance. Artists painted murals of the Sunfire cannon surrounded by symbols of unity. Musicians wrote anthems that played on repeat, reminding everyone why they were fighting. The Krylos thought fear would divide humanity, but it only made them stronger. Back at the cannon site, preparations continued despite the chaos. Engineers worked tirelessly, double-checking every connection and running simulations to predict potential outcomes. Data streamed in from observatories around the globe, tracking solar activity and calculating risks. Every calculation pointed to the same conclusion: activating the singularity core would amplify the Sunfire cannon's power exponentially, but it might also destabilize the sun further, causing unpredictable effects on Earth's climate. It was a risk no one wanted to take, but time was running out. The Krylos weren't waiting patiently. Their ships swarmed closer, bombarding Earth's defenses with relentless ferocity. Pilots flew sorties day and night, dodging enemy fire and launching counterattacks. Ground troops dug in, holding their positions against overwhelming odds. Supplies dwindled, injuries mounted, and exhaustion set in. Yet, somehow, humanity kept fighting. Ordinary men and women performed extraordinary feats of bravery. A farmer used his tractor to block a road, buying precious minutes for retreating soldiers. A teacher led her students to safety while fending off drones with makeshift weapons. Stories like these spread quickly, inspiring others to keep pushing forward. Finally, the moment arrived. The Sunfire cannon stood ready, its core glowing brighter than ever. Technicians flipped switches, adjusted dials, and monitored readings. Outside, troops braced themselves for the inevitable assault. Commanders gave final orders, their voices steady despite the tension in the air. Everyone knew this was it, the moment that would decide the fate of humanity. As the countdown began, the Krylos launched their biggest attack yet. Hundreds of ships descended upon the cannon site, firing energy beams and dropping bombs. Explosions rocked the ground, sending shockwaves through the area. Soldiers fought valiantly, holding the line as long as they could. Civilians huddled in bunkers, praying for the activation to succeed. Time seemed to slow as the clock ticked down to zero. When the switch was finally flipped, the world held its breath. For a brief second, nothing happened. Then, the Singularity Core roared to life, unleashing a blinding burst of energy. The Sunfire cannon fired, its beams slicing through the sky like a spear of light. One by one, Krylos ships disintegrated, caught in the devastating blast. Cheers erupted from command centers and bunkers alike. Humanity had done the impossible. It had struck a decisive blow against the invaders, but victory came at a cost. The activation of the Singularity Core triggered massive solar flares, disrupting Earth's magnetic field and causing widespread blackouts. Storms raged across continents, flooding cities and destroying crops. Climate patterns shifted unpredictably, leaving entire regions uninhabitable. People stared at the skies, wondering if they'd traded one disaster for another. Still, amidst the chaos, there was hope. The Krylos fleet was decimated, the remaining ships retreating into deep space. Humanity had proven it could stand up to even the most advanced foes. More importantly, it had shown that unity and determination could overcome any obstacle. As cleanup efforts began and rebuilding plans took shape, people looked to the future with cautious optimism. The war was far from over, but humanity had taken a giant step toward peace and survival. The aftermath of the Singularity Core's activation left Earth in a state of both triumph and turmoil. The Krylos fleet, once an unstoppable force, had been reduced to drifting debris scattered across the void of space. Their retreat was swift and chaotic, leaving behind only remnants of their shattered armada. Humanity had won, but the victory felt bittersweet. The cost of activating the core lingered in the skies above and the hearts below. Solar flares continued to wreak havoc on Earth's systems, triggering violent storms, rising oceans, and unpredictable weather patterns. Crops failed, power grids collapsed, and millions were displaced. It was as if the planet itself was grieving the strain humanity had placed upon it. Yet, even in the face of such devastation, there was no time for despair. Survivors rolled up their sleeves and got to work. Communities came together, pooling resources and sharing what little they had. In urban centers, engineers worked tirelessly to restore electricity and communication networks. In rural areas, farmers experimented with new techniques to salvage crops despite the erratic climate. Volunteers traveled across borders, offering aid wherever it was needed most. Humanity had faced countless challenges before, but this was different. It wasn't just about rebuilding. It was about reimagining how to live in harmony with a wounded world. Amidst the recovery efforts, a new message arrived from the stars. This time, it wasn't from the Krylos. A distant alien race known as the Quarren transmitted a signal that reached Earth's battered satellites. Their tone was calm, almost reverent. "We have observed your struggle," they said. "You are not alone." The Quarren explained that they had been watching the war unfold from afar, studying humanity's resilience and ingenuity. They admitted they had initially dismissed Earth as insignificant, a primitive backwater unworthy of attention. But after witnessing the battle against the Krylos, their perspective changed. "We see now why the Varathi warned us," the Quarren continued. "Perhaps there is hope for peace after all." The transmission sent waves of emotion rippling through humanity. For so long, people had wondered whether life beyond Earth would bring salvation or destruction. Now, here was proof that some species respected strength, not just military might, but the strength found in unity, creativity, and perseverance. The Quarren offered assistance, promising technology and knowledge to help Earth heal its wounds. They also extended an invitation to join a coalition of peaceful civilizations working toward mutual understanding and cooperation. It was a chance to step onto the galactic stage, not as conquerors, but as equals. But accepting the Quarren's offer wasn't without complications. Trust remained fragile. After the betrayal during the war, many questioned whether opening themselves to another alien race was wise. Could the Quarren truly be trusted? Or were they simply waiting for humanity to let its guard down? Debates raged in government halls and town squares alike. Some argued that isolation was the safest path forward. Others believed humanity had already proven it could handle whatever the universe threw at it. Ultimately, the decision was made to take the risk. Closing themselves off would mean turning their backs on everything they'd fought for to survive. Yes, but also to connect, to grow, and to thrive. As Earth began collaborating with the Quarren, stories of heroism emerged from the ashes of war. People wanted to remember not just the battles, but the moments that defined humanity's spirit. There was the story of a young girl who used her father's old radio to broadcast messages of hope to stranded survivors. Her voice became a lifeline for thousands, reminding them they weren't alone. Then there was the retired mechanic who converted abandoned vehicles into mobile shelters, providing refuge for families fleeing flooded towns. And who could forget the teachers who turned classrooms into community hubs, teaching children survival skills alongside math and science. These stories weren't just shared locally, They spread across the globe, inspiring others to find light in the darkness. Artists painted murals depicting the war and its aftermath, capturing both the pain and the resilience. Musicians composed symphonies, blending traditional instruments with electronic beats, creating soundtracks that echoed humanity's journey. Writers documented every detail, ensuring future generations would know the sacrifices made and the lessons learned. Slowly but surely, Earth began to heal. With the Quarren's help, scientists developed technologies to stabilize the planet's climate and repair damaged ecosystems. Renewable energy sources replaced outdated systems, powered by innovations born out of necessity during the war. Cities rebuilt smarter, incorporating green spaces and sustainable designs. Even the scars left by the conflict became symbols of strength, monuments erected in memory of those lost, standing tall as reminders of what humanity had overcome. As years passed, Earth transformed into something greater than anyone could have imagined. The war had forced humanity to confront its flaws, division, greed, and short-sightedness, and emerge stronger for it. Nations that once clashed over borders now worked side by side, united by a shared purpose. Ordinary citizens took pride in knowing they had played a part in shaping history. Humanity hadn't just survived. It had evolved. One day, decades after the war ended, a child looked up at the night sky and asked their parent, "What's out there?" The parent smiled, pointing to a cluster of stars twinkling faintly in the distance. "Out there," they said, "are friends we've never met, places we've yet to explore, and stories waiting to happen. We're not just a small part of the universe, we're capable of changing it." And perhaps that was the greatest victory of all. Humanity had stared into the abyss and refused to blink. It had faced unimaginable odds and risen above them. Now, standing on the brink of a new era, it carried with it the knowledge that no challenge was insurmountable, not when people stood together, refusing to give up. In the end, the war wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a testament to humanity's boundless potential. The Varathi had warned others not to underestimate humans, and the Krylos had paid the price for ignoring that advice. But the true legacy of the conflict lay not in destruction, but in creation, in the courage, compassion, and determination that defined what it meant to be human. And as Earth stepped boldly into the cosmos, it did so with the understanding that its greatest strength wasn't its weapons or technology, but the unbreakable bond between individuals willing to fight, sacrifice, and dream for each other and for the future.